I'm Dr. Tom Ulrich, and I like to talk about leadership and engineering. Hey, in this video, I'd like to talk about a concept that I remember when I first encountered this years ago when I was a young engineering manager, really amazed me, which is the idea that management and leadership are two distinct concepts. Now, in terms of the literature, probably the guy who really got this idea really moving was a guy named John Kotter. He has a great book called The Force for Change, How Leadership Differs from Management. And what he argues is that what managers do, what management involves, is producing order and consistency. So, planning and budgeting, organizing and staffing, controlling, problem solving, sort of, creating order, eliminating chaos. Leadership, in contrast, produces change and movement. So while a manager wants to plan and budget, a leader is interested in establishing direction. We're going over there. A manager is interested in organizing and staffing. A leader is interested in aligning people. Let's get this person's good at this sort of task. Let's sort of align him with these things. So the leader's thinking strategically at a much higher level about who's good at what and all these things, and really aligning to create motivation and everybody just in a spot to succeed, where managers are just kind of worried about organizing. And finally, Kotter argues that leaders are consumed with the idea of motivating people and inspiring people. A leader wakes up in the morning and the first thing they're thinking about is how do I motivate my people? How do I inspire them? Where maybe a manager wakes up and he's just like, how do I get these people in line and things like that. So Warren Bennis and Nanus, in their one of their books in 1985, they said it this way. It's a quote that sometimes people say that Peter Drucker said this, but I'm pretty sure these guys said it first. Here's what they say: managers are people who do things right, and leaders are people who do the right thing. See, a manager's worrying about doing it right, and leaders thinking much bigger. It's like, well, let's make sure we're doing the right thing. And there's other guys like Zalesnik. He argues that not only is the sort of operation of being a manager and a leader different, he argues that leaders and managers themselves are different kinds of people. Now, in fact, Gary Uckel, in his graduate level book on leadership, he describes a set of researchers that they take this to an extreme idea. They argue that good management and good leadership cannot exist in the same person. I think that's a little bit crazy. I think usually you're stronger at one or the other. Our chief administrative officer here at Tandem, she certainly is an example of someone who excels at both. So I think there are examples of people who can do them both. But I do think there's some validity in saying that some people are more prone to being one or the other, just sort of just in terms of their disposition and personality and stuff. Robert Greenleaf, in his book on servant leadership, he has a similar idea. He doesn't use the term manager leader. He talks about conceptualizers versus operators. And his idea is that leaders who are operators are just kind of wanting to make sure we follow the procedure and that we, make sure the paperwork's good and stuff, whereas conceptualizers back up and are always thinking about the big picture and challenging what we're doing. And that's the same idea. The interesting observation Greenleaf makes is, he says, the thing about it is conceptualizers generally recognize the need for operators. So you're thinking about the big picture and you're inclined to say something like, we're going to need some people who are real good at just following the rules and making sure this happens, and conceptualizers get that. His observation is operators generally do not see the need for conceptualizers, and it's sort of part of this sort of a smaller field of view and not able to see the big picture. And many operators just would be happier if we just simply got rid of all the conceptualizers, which of course would probably kill the company. Certainly, as a minimum, it would destroy the company's ability to innovate and be creative and things of that nature. At any rate, hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into the difference between being a manager and being a leader. And As always, I'm Tom Ulrich, and I like to talk about leadership and engineering. And oh, by the way, it's not a coincidence that I'm not saying management engineering. I like to talk about leadership and engineering. At any rate, we'll talk to you next time.